How's it going, everyone? Today we will be breaking down week 3 of Dana White's Contender Series. There is no fight at the end of this week for Saturday, so Tuesday is all that we get. Let's get into it. All right, so the first fight of the night. So I do believe the card starts at 6 p.m. Season 9, Week 3. The first fight of the night, Dante Johnson versus Darian Abbey. 5-0 for Dante Johnson, 9-4 for Darian Abbey. Dante Johnson is a minus 275 favorite. He's a southpaw, 6 foot tall. Darian's a 6'6" orthodox fighter. This is at heavyweight. I do believe. We'll look over here at Dante Johnson's record, and his last fight I do believe was at 205 against James Ford. It's sort of like an interesting thing with this entire card is a lot of these guys have fought each other or have similar opponents, especially some of the higher weight classes. So this was a fight that Dante Johnson had against Ryan Parker, in which he secured the win in the first round, 4 minutes 27 seconds in. And you'll see kind of off the rip that, let's see, so Darian, he is super, light on his feet. And as you see, he's not very big. This fight, I do believe, was the one that I was talking about that is that light heavyweight, but super light on his feet. And you could kind of see, with his movement, that he really, really is very bouncy, but he does possess a good amount of power in his hands. I'll kind of show you a bit of the finishing sequence here. He drops him with a left hook, leaping left hook there. He drops him, and he's able to finish up with some great ground and pound. And he does that out of this naked switch here that you could see. This naked switch by Ryan. And he's able to use that left hand and kind of, curve it over the guard of Ryan Parker. As soon as his hands drop, he drops that left hand and he ends up securing the win. So one thing I do want to kind of touch on, though, before I go over and I break down a little bit of Darian Abbey, is his last fight was recent. Dante Johnson recently fought in July. He's 5-0. He's 26 years old, and he's a southpaw. I feel like that is very important. The only thing is the height difference. I'm sure there's a decent reach difference as well, but I can see Dante utilizing his blitzes to get in on Darian Abbey. All right, so going over to the next fight, Darian Abbey. So he is actually fighting Alec Lorenz in this video. Alec Lorenz is also fighting on the card. I believe he is the, he's up there on the card. He's also fighting. One of the things that I think Darian does very well is his countering ability. He backs up, he kind of resets as he blitzes, right? He throws a 1-2, he circles out, and then he comes over with his left. And you kind of see the way that he utilizes that. 1-2, circles over, catches Alec with the left hand, drops him, and then eventually, as they get up, he throws a very, very clean uppercut right up the middle that flatlines Alec. Just they are striking with a ton of power. And I'm interested to see how Darian Abbey fights on the back foot against Dante, and if Dante could still maintain his streak. One thing with Darian, he did also fight, recently fought back in March. He does have a couple losses on his record, and they are by KO in that first round. A couple of the fights are in the first round KO. I would say, if you are going to, do anything with this fight in terms of betting or anything like that, I would recommend taking below. Just because he has been knocked out in that first round. He's also knocked the guys out in that first round. And I feel like the whole thing is, kind of them trading Darian fighting on that back foot, Dante fighting on that front foot, and using his explosiveness and his accuracy, speed to get Darian out of there. But I'm excited to see how this fight goes. I think that the heavyweight division is in desperate need of some new contenders. I feel like if they could build Dante good or Darian good, I feel like it'd be great for the division. So moving to the fight that I'm honestly looking forward to the most, Christian Perez and Manuel Sosa. So if you don't know who Manuel Sosa is, he does have a win over Mauricio Rufy. He did knock him out in the second round back in 2019. So obviously that was 6 years ago. But this guy is he's great. I mean, he comes out swinging for the fences. He's great. He has good pressure. We're going to talk about him first. But he's facing Christian Perez, Puas, right? This guy, honestly, I really would be excited to see this guy in the UFC. He is currently on a pretty decent unbeaten streak. Has some good KOs, some submissions. He's very, very well-rounded from kind of what I've seen. He has been fighting in the same promotion, though, for a while. So it's going to be interesting to see him go against some very good competition in Sosa. Sosa has fought in LFA, has fought in Bellator, PFL. He has a ton of experience. So we're going to look a little bit at Manuel Sosa. Like I said, this is the fight that I'm looking forward to the most. Like I said as well, he does have some crazy pressure. You could kind of see in this video, and this fight against Mauricio Rufy, he kind of does great at getting fighters beyond that little black mark there, cutting them against the cage and using it to trap them, right? One thing that I do see he does struggle with is that lead jab. That definitely does put him in his tracks in his fight that I'll show after this. He does kind of get caught by it a few times before he ends up getting the finish. But he ends up kind of going to the body there and squaring himself up and absolutely unloading this left hook as Rufy kind of exits a little awkward with his hands down. And he's able to go ahead and get that finish there. So very exciting to see him, in such a big spotlight. Very similar to Dante, when we were talking about Dante. Very light on his feet. Very, very light on his feet. He's very bouncy. He has a ton of energy, and he's ready to kind of unwind either that right hand or that left hand, on his opponents. He does like to get in that clinch there. Don't know if it's a good idea with Christian, and I'll show you guys here in a second whenever we do get to that. But in this fight against Wild, he was having a great deal of success with his blitzes. The only thing was when he was attempting to cut off the cage, and you could kind of see here, right? You could see he uses his pressure to back Wild up against the fence, right? Like we talk about, getting behind that black line, right? But as you see, right, he kind of squares himself up often. You see plenty times when he's kind of just standing there, and he's squared up. And you see Wild does a great job at getting off the fence, taking the middle again, and using it to kind of keep Sosa, kind of fighting a little awkwardly, right? And it's because instead of Sosa trying to cut off the cage, using his blitzes to cut off the cage, he oftentimes ends up following and chasing a little bit. And whenever you square yourself, you're in a horrible position to kind of get out of range, because if Wild wanted to, let's say, throw this right as soon as he's squared up, it's one of those things that you can get in trouble for doing. And you could kind of see the way, Wild just kind of circles out, gets straight, right? One thing that Israel Adesanya does very well is as soon as he's against that as soon as he has his back against the cage, he circles out and he takes the middle of the octagon, right? You see Wild kind of puts himself back into position where Sosa could kind of still blitz again. But you see how just, excited Sosa is, how ready and willing he is to kind of trade punches. And that ends up leading to the finish against Wild. This is in Bellator, by the way. So he's not fighting against horrible competition. But they kind of get into a bit of a crazy exchange here. And Sosa uses his right hand over the top of Wild's lead hand, kind of throws that right over, and as Wild tries to circle out, he stays, right? He circles out and then he stays. He plants his lead foot, and as Sosa, right, ends up inevitably switching from that southpaw or that orthodox stance straight into southpaw, you see he's able to kind of use that generated power to go over, landing the kill shot, and putting Wild out. Did lose a decision. That was his first loss as a professional MMA fighter. He's only 28 years old. He's super young. So really looking forward to see him fighting against Christian. Like I mentioned, Christian is on a pretty decent winning streak at the moment. I believe he is on a 7-fight win streak, if I'm seeing that right. KOs, submissions, super, super well-rounded. One thing that he does favor is the clinch, specifically using clinch knees. You'll see in this fight against Bruno Canetti, he utilizes his knees almost immediately, gets into that clinch almost immediately. And that's what I was talking about with, kind of getting into the clinch with Christian, because he does utilize those knees straight up the middle so well. And you actually see in this fight a ton of his grappling prowess on the feet here. You see here, this is kind of the finishing sequence. This guy does KO people in that first round. So Canetti throws a kick, kind of a naked kick, ends up falling off balance. Throws a naked kick, falls off balance. Immediately, you see get right into that clinch, right? As they stand up to the feet, you see him kind of digging for overhooks, seeing if Canetti keeps his neck down. As soon as they're in a stable situation, spins off, utilizes that Muay Thai clinch with the foot pointing down, and the knee kind of sharp straight into the face of Canetti, which wobbles him. And as they kind of get back into stance, he gets hurt, but he doesn't move, right? He doesn't move backwards. He doesn't try to cut off on an angle. Instead, he stays there and in kind of that Tatsuro Taira sense, lands a mean right and then lands another one. Drops him. As soon as they get up to their feet, you see Puas just smell blood, starts throwing just haymakers, and ends up landing a mean elbow, mean stepping elbow. I mean, this kid just has some nasty Muay Thai, ends up ending the fight. So he honestly too, he's another guy that has just ridiculous power. I'm gonna pull over this fight as well. This is another fight that he had, and you see just dominating his opponent on the ground. Taking his back, utilizing a good body lock, and switching it too. You know what I mean? You see him kind of switch over, get some of that pressure off that ankle there, and just rides him out for the rest of that round. As soon as they get back up to their feet, though, you see once again the power of this kid, right? Teeps utilizes his Muay Thai, and then look, a nice step in with that front foot, keeping that back foot planted, and kind of a pumping jab that he uses to absolutely knock down his opponent. and secure the victory. So this guy has legit power, has great, jiu-jitsu, good wrestling as well. Very excited to see him against Sosa. Like I said, this guy's on a tear at the moment, but I will mention one thing. I will preface it with one thing. He has not fought since 2023, December 2023. It's almost been 2 full years since he's been out of the fight game. You have to wonder if there's going to be some ring rust. He's only 26 years old, but got to think maybe there's some ring rust. Maybe there's something that could maybe prevent him. But these guys have very similar records with, Manuel. Maybe, I'd say having the much more experience against high-level competition. But, I could definitely see Christian using his jab to keep pressure away from Sosa, maybe tiring him out on the feet or tiring him out on the ground, and then maybe securing a finish on the feet. But with Sosa, you don't ever want to exchange with that guy. That guy will knock you out. Moving to the next fight, we have Abdul Rahman Yakhyayev, right? I don't know if I'm saying it right. And then Alec Lawrence. Like we said, right? Darian Abbey was able to finish Alec in the first round. Abdul is more of a wrestler type. With Alec, the best kind of comparison that I could have to him, very similar to a fighter that's already in the UFC, would be Joe Pyfer. Uses his boxing very well. So if you guys remember, Thomas Powell is the gentleman that Alex Pereira knocked out in LFA. These guys also met in LFA, Alec and Powell. Powell was able to secure the Lawrence was able to secure the victory here. He does have such a nasty right hand. You see, he kind of takes that a little bit of that outside footing, catches Powell, uses some knees, some good uppercuts, ends up getting, slammed, but because he got a little too overzealous. But you could kind of see this guy does have some good stand-up, man. As highly touted as he is, he has great grappling, and I could really see him using his grappling to negate a lot of Alex's game plan of, utilizing his right hand, utilizing his power to secure the victory. This fight, honestly, it's a decent fight. I think it's more of a build-up fight for these guys, and I'm very curious to see how they do. Okay, so moving to the next fight, we have Damon Wilson and Marcio Barbosa. So this is an incredible fight, man. It is such a great fight. It's very interesting because Marcio, very good, ton of power, has good knockouts, but look at the difference in experience that Marcio has in comparison to Damon Wilson. Damon Wilson, that's not to say that he hasn't been fighting bad competition. He is in Cage Warriors. That is like the most premier, fighting organization in the UK. So, I mean, he is out there fighting good fighters. So I'll go ahead and kind of pull up a video of Damon. Wilson is very good at is utilizing his leg kicks, utilizing his jab. However, he does struggle a bit on the ground in this fight against Camargo. Constantly gets shot on, but does have the wherewithal to kind of disengage when he needs to. But I think his greatest weapon here is his knees. You can kind of see that does lead to the finishing sequence. Utilizes his knees very well to drop Camargo and end up securing the victory. But like I said, that low leg kick, that 1-2 is great. He's a solid fighter. I mean, what can you say? He does have some good wins. You know what I mean? His last fight was in this year, March 13th. Fights good out of both stances. KOs in the first round. But like I said, does struggle a bit on the ground. As opposed to Marcio Barbosa, Marcio Barbosa is a KO machine. Nothing but KOs in that first round. Has lost a few times, but last fight, almost being a year ago. Thing with Marcio Barbosa is this guy has power. He's very similar to Sosa from earlier, in the fact that he walks people down. The thing with Barbosa that's a little different is he does cut off the cage properly. Does swing wild sometimes, but look, you see here, he immediately starts kind of cutting off that cage, kind of suffocating Oliveira here. And he ends up using that exceptionally well to jab, setting up his hands, right? Following, Oliveira as he tries to kind of go this way. Barbosa uses that left hand here to kind of stop him in his tracks. Boom. And then he uses that 2 as well, comes over with the 2, and then lands a left shovel hook as he's exiting, straight through the guard of Oliveira, dropping him and, eventually securing the fight. So he definitely is one of those guys that has that one-punch power. And like I said, a ton of experience. Will kind of eat one to land one. Oliveira's game plan in this fight, very evident. Fight on that back foot, pick Barbosa apart. Unfortunately, Barbosa utilizes his experience to kind of cut off the cage, landing that KO for the finish. He's just trying to land a shot. He feels, and you see that, right? Off of that one punch, just stuns him and utilizes his left hand, bink, and utilizes it just so well. That's really the weapon that I feel could give Damon Wilson the biggest issues, is that left hook, that leaping left hook. Because if that lands, you go out. It's hard to survive that. So yeah, very excited for this guy, to see him in there, see him fighting. I would definitely pay attention to Marcio. All right, so main event of the evening, Trent Miller taking on Ryan Gondra. Very interesting fight as well. Trent Miller is huge. I mean, just look at this guy. He is huge. Was kind of fighting, some lower level competition for a while. Recently just got a KO in the 3rd round. But, I mean, this guy was knocking people out really, really brutally. I mean, I'll show you guys kind of some of this fight here. That he had against Weist. You see he kind of is pressuring him, switches over to that southpaw stance off of this kick here. Let's see. There we go. Kind of lifts up that leg to get a reaction, to create some space. Switches over to southpaw, throws a body kick. Weist suspects it low, lands high, not ending the fight in the first round in, 30 seconds. So very good fighter, has some good power in his hands, but Ryan Gondra is the favorite in this fight. This guy's also legit. Very excited to see him in the Contender Series. But does swing crazy. I mean, left, right. And kind of once he senses like a finish coming, uses all of his power and everything to try and get them out of there. So very excited to see this fight. Honestly, I do see this fight, though, going the distance. Trent Miller is training out of Extreme Couture. Great gym, tons of great fighters, produced champions. This year they have been struggling a little bit, but I'm very excited to see this guy in the Contender Series against Ryan. Another first-round KO artist. But I do think, honestly, this fight will go the distance. I am betting on these fights. Very curious to see kind of how those bets go. If I am to give you guys some, recommendations, I think for this first fight of the night, I would still maintain that Dante Johnson pick, potentially having it ending in the first round. Same thing with this fight here, lightweight. I do think this is a closer fight than people think. I know the time out for Perez has been a minute, but this is a super interesting fight. Do think it is closer. I wouldn't necessarily pick on either guy to win, but I would say it would be in the first or the second round a finish. Abdul and Alec, I do think, again, this is another fight that will end in a finish. I think Abdul will use his wrestling, use his grappling to get Alec out of there. The next fight, featherweight, I think Barbosa is going to get it done. I think he's the more physical guy. I think he has more power. I think Damon can hit Marcio, but I think Marcio will use his power to cut off the cage and potentially finish Damon Wilson in that first round. This fight here, I do think that Ryan Gandra will win. I don't think it's going to end in the first round, potentially in the second, but I think it will be more of a drawn-out fight, potentially ending in the third. So that would kind of be my picks for these 5 fights. Super excited. If you're not watching the Contender Series, I do think you are missing out a bunch. I think it's a great chance to see a lot of the the fighters that come into the UFC. The Contender Series has produced like 3 champs already: Jamal Hill, Sean O'Malley, Jack Della Maddalena, with guys, big name guys, who are fighting on pay-per-views, co-main events. Jean Silva fighting in a couple weeks came off the Contender Series. Mauricio Rufy came off the Contender Series. Tons of guys who come off that Contender Series and find themselves in crazy opportunities in the UFC. So I do think that you need to start watching the Contender Series. This would be a great place to start. We have knockout artists, submission artists. We have, drawn-out fights. I think it's a great way to see some of the talent coming into the UFC, and then maybe kind of recognizing them later in the future whenever they're on, a big card. You never know. A guy like Cristian Perez could go on a run in the 45 and 55. A guy like Barbosa could go on a run at featherweight. Abdul could go on a run at light heavyweight. You don't know. Some of these guys could come in here, end up being champions one day. So I do definitely recommend to check out the Contender Series. If you guys think I'm wrong with any of my picks, or if you kind of disagree with anything that I'm saying, please let me know. I would love to hear the feedback. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe. It helps more than you know.